Hello and welcome to the channel. My name is Matt and today we're going to be talking about card design and the second project that we're working on. Now, I might sound a little bit different today. That's because I'm ill. It's not the dreaded C19, but it is a cold. So, today the first thing I want to talk about is card design. We're going to go through a couple of the fundamentals as well as how to actually make a card on Component Studio. And then after that I want to show you the second project that I'm working on and why it's taken me a little bit of time to upload to YouTube. If we look at the Above Deck Alley card in front of us, this is a card for the pirate game that we're making, first project of hopefully many. We can see on this card quite a few things that look very similar between this game and a whole bunch of other trading card games. Now, even without knowing exactly how the pirate game works, you can assume that at the top here, obviously there's the name, then these two things are probably either cost or some form of rarity signifier, something like that. And then down here at the bottom, we've probably got health and damage and some text with some keywords, and then some other cost or resource or something at the bottom. Now that's a very basic way to lay out your cards. I personally think, especially for the prototyping stage, when you still haven't figured out exactly how your game plays, because you haven't been able to prototype, therefore you haven't been able to play test, I think this sort of format works perfectly. Okay, so that's the basics of how cards, I think at least, should be laid out. You should very clearly be able to see what resources you need to pay for them, any information that relates specifically to your game. For example, we've got the first order and the lookout keywords, and then obviously if it is an attack and defense kind of card game, then you'll want their power and their defense, or their health and their damage, that sort of thing. And of course a space for an image. So if we quickly jump into creating a card, and I'll go through how we create one on Component Studio, we will then be presented with this blank card. And we have a bunch of stuff on the right hand side and it all looks a little bit confusing, but that's okay. These component variables are just the things that we put into our data set. So we've got the name of the card, we've got the cost of the card, we've got our keywords, our health. Don't worry about it too much. That stuff is just so that we can move information from our data set over to our card without manually having to do it. The first thing I would recommend you do, whether it's on Component Studio or Microsoft Office or whatever it is to create a box for your background. This will be your main background color. The reason we put this in first is because if you want to change how it looks, if you want to put any sort of effects on it, you want it to have hatchings rather than a solid color. For example, if we go here, we go hatch, we can then choose a hatch pattern, go for a checkerboard effect. Let's say we want that as our card. If you carefully put boxes around the rest of your card at the end rather than at the beginning, you're going to find that it's a lot more work and it's a great big pain in the bum to do. Whereas if we put it in our background, we can change this as much as we want and it won't affect the rest of the card. Next up, we want to add another box. This is going to be for our actual card information on it, so it's going to be nice and clear compared to our background there. Okay, so what I've done there is I've changed the width and the height of the box to something a little bit more appropriate, and I've moved it up to the top of the card. The reason that I've made this text box white is because then we can easily see the text that's inside of it. We don't have to worry about it blurring in with the background or anything like that. Next up, we're going to create another box, and this one is going to be for our resource. It could be a box or a circle or any shape you like, really, depending on sort of how your resource looks. So if, for example, you have a resource that looks like, I don't know, cogs maybe, then you'd want to create this resource to look like that. That way it's very easily identifiable what that symbol means. Again, for your prototype, if you haven't thought those sorts of things through, if it's just a case of you will pay one resource to get this card, then just put a simple shape with a number in it. Okay, so I've put this little circle here in the corner. I've moved the name box over a little bit just so that we've got everything that we want inside this blue dotted line. It's quite hard to see given the blue background. Once we have that set up, we're going to create another box. This is going to be for our image. Okay, so I have the image box where I want it. Now, if this was yours and you wanted to make it a different shape or you wanted to tweak it a little bit better and spend a little bit more time on it, I would recommend to do that. Mine's not perfect, but it's where I want it for this test card. Next up, we're going to create another box. It's a lot of boxes making cards, a lot of boxes. Now, I could either create two boxes here, one for the keyword list and one for the abilities, or I can create one big box and put both sets of information in it. It's entirely up to you. Okay, and now we're going to be putting in our damage and our health icons at the bottom. You can put these anywhere on your card as long as they're somewhere visible and clearly defined, and make sure that they're in a place where the other person knows where to look. They're not sort of scattered about or different depending on the type of card and things like that. Make sure that all your cards are uniform, even if it's a rare or a super duper legendary. You want the enemy or opponent player to be able to see these numbers so they know which cards are the biggest threat to them. So I've put a couple of boxes here that will be clearly visible to all players, and they'll show our health and our damage. Now we're going to go and put the text boxes in. We're going to click on this text button down here. It'll create a sample piece of text, and that's just fine. And then we want to make sure that we click this outline text area box. That way we can see where our text box is. Now, difficult to see here, but that's actually the entire center of this card. Could potentially be text, and that's not what we want. What we want to do is change this down. So get rid of this, get rid of this, get rid of this. Now we just have the text that is in our data sheet. Now this is the name of our card. We want to move this so the text is roughly in the center where we want it, and then we're going to change the size of the text box so that any other cards we put in will always fit the text into that text box. I'll show you what I mean in just a second. Okay, so now I've got this outline box here that shows me that my text box is the right size. Now, if any of your dataset cards, while you're just hashing away at making your cards, let's say you call somebody, I don't know, Jeff the test card that was the best that ever lived, obviously that's not going to fit into that box if it just allowed it to continue at this font size. By reducing that text box limit with this size here, that means that the text will automatically shrink down so that it fits within this box that we set up. It's always good to do that, even with like your resource numbers and things like that. And there we have it. We've now put all of our text boxes in. We've aligned most of them, and we've had a little play around with how we set things up. So for example, the rate keyword here, I would recommend formatting that different, maybe a different font, or bold, or all capitals, or something to make sure that it looks a little bit different. What I've done with that is I set that to align in the center, and the same for the abilities keyword. That way, no matter what I add, it will always come into the center and line up nice and neatly there. If you put it to the left like I have with this to resource, it goes off to the side. So align pretty much everything to the center. Also mess around with fonts and sizes of your text and colors and all of that different stuff, adding shadows and border lines and backgrounds and all of that. Have fun with it. So I hope this has helped you guys. If you have any questions at all, whether it's using a different program or any specific questions for Component Studio, leave them in the comments and I will get to them. If that's all you came for, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. If you wanted to see about the second project, hang on just a little while longer for me. Okay, so this is the second project that we're working on. It is a board game rather than a card game, and it is something that I think we can crack through quite quickly. So far, I have, as you can see, all of these chits made. This is just a demo situation set out on the table for you so you can sort of get the idea. But it is a mix between an intrigue game and a dudes on a map war game. Let me know what you think about it. Let me know if you have any ideas for a cool dude on the map war game, and we can branch this one off as well. This one's a lot more visual. I like the fact that this one I can get visuals down for it very quickly, whereas with the pirate card game I obviously have to pay for quite a lot of art before we get to have that nice visual YouTube aesthetic. But yeah, I hope you've enjoyed the video. Please do let me know. Please do ignore the fact that I have a cold, and I will see you guys in the next video.